But meantime, some important words to be said here, and a reminder that, of course, you can always, in case you miss a confession, because you forget, or you're just busy doing something else, you can always catch up with every single confession by doing what, Ollie?
Going to the Greatest Hits Radio app.
Yes.
And going to the Simon Mayo's Daily Confession podcast.
There you go. That's what you do. But you're listening live to this one, so you don't need to bother just at the moment. Can I just say before we... I've got very clear direction on this.
Oh, really?
This is a 12 certificate.
Oh!
Also, do not follow the example of today's confessee.
Mm-hmm.
Do not try this at home.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Even better.
Great.
Dear Confessions team, Father Simon, listeners and distinguished guests. This is from Nigel, by the way. I have this particular incident that has been playing on my mind for exactly 50 years now, which I need final closure. I'm now 65. I've told this story over the years and have had mixed responses.
Okay.
Imagine a scrawny 15-year-old schoolboy who presented himself to the rest of the school as a bully magnet. And every day, there I was, dreading the daily trip to St. Custard's, especially the daily taunt by the head bully, Grabber, who thought it was great fun to go through the ritual of inspecting my packed lunch contents. Being from a not very well-off family, my mum and dad could not afford school dinners, and therefore I was sent off to school with my daily ration of sandwiches, blessed with a Cadbury's Animal chocolate bar if I was lucky. To add injury to insult, the Packers, as we were known, were relegated to a corner of the school dining room, so we all stood out like a sore thumb. Every day, Grabber would walk across to our table, look at me, and say, "What have you got in your sandwiches?"
Okay, Ray Winston again.
Yes. With apologies to Ray. His daily ritual had started. After showing the contents of my sandwiches, normally, says Nigel, marmalade and cheese.
What?
I can only imagine that they're separate, because you wouldn't...
No.
I don't think you would. Anyway, marmalade and cheese sandwich. Grabber's big gorilla-like fist used to come crashing down onto my sandwiches, spreading the contents all over the table and floor. I did not respond to this provocation, except to pick up the remnants of my lunch and try to make something edible out of what was left. The bits on the floor were duly trodden on, whilst Grabber turned round to cheers from his harem of trainee thugs. This went on for many months, Father Simon, and then one day Grabber came over to the table and went through his routine as normal. "What's in your sandwiches today, then?" I replied honestly and said, "Drawing pins." Was he listening? Was he heck? As usual, his fist came crashing down onto my sandwiches.
Oh, very good.
Rather than... It's not funny.
No.
Rather than his sadistic grin, the dining hall was filled with an almighty scream as the drawing pins found their target. On lifting his hand, at least 5 had stuck to the underside of his fist, with blood spurting from very many other puncture wounds. Immediately, the hall went silent, waiting for the expected retribution. The problem is that he was in so much agony he could not think straight. The dinner ladies rushed across, looked at his hands and said, "You've had that coming for a long time." Good old dinner ladies.
Yeah.
Anyway, Grabber was taken to hospital. A few days later, he came back to school with his hand heavily bandaged. As lunch approached, I felt physically sick at the thought of my impending punishment. He walked over to me and said, "Hello," and made out we were best mates. The bullying stopped, and in fact, he made an effort to try and sit next to me in class and always walk behind me in the corridor in case I had further tricks up my sleeve. But my question is, am I guilty of actual bodily harm or self-defense? Do I get forgiven? Says Nigel. Well, that is a very, very interesting one. It's quite a difficult one to call how Sister Holly's going to go with that, because on the one hand, inexcusable, but on the other hand, excusable.
Exactly.
No, you're right.
They're the two things which we now...
Those 2 words.
On the one hand and on the other.
It's so difficult because I hate bullies, and we all hate bullies,
Yes.
and so there was a small part of me that was really quite proud of him for standing up to the bully. I don't think putting safety pins in a sandwich was quite the right way to go about it, really. Also, the fact that the dinner ladies said, oh yeah, you've had that coming for a long time. Why didn't the dinner ladies step in earlier? Yeah. Why weren't they telling him off earlier? I know it's a cliche, but maybe if he told a teacher, told the dinner ladies, got some friends around, and maybe just stood up to them and just said, no, get away from my sandwich, he would have listened, and maybe this wouldn't have happened. So no, I'm unfortunately not forgiving Nigel.
A brother from another country.
Get away from my sandwich.
Yeah.
We're keeping that on tape. Excellent.
I mean, Nigel told him what was there.
He did say, didn't he? I mean, I'm definitely going to forgive. Number one is very funny. Number two, he told him. Number three, where were the dinner ladies? What have you been doing? Well, you're going to come over now? But, he's been having it coming. Where were you when he was squashing with marmalade and cheese sandwiches? So yes, and who can forgive him? I can forgive him. Clearly taking the law into his own hands. We don't condone that. But that said, I'm going to forgive him, so I probably do. So, for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, 61054. First word is Simon. The question is, do you forgive Nigel, yes or no, for his sandwich/drawing pin confession? Obviously, No.
Yeah.
And before the news, a confession from Nigel from 50 years ago when he was at school. And head bully Grabber would make his life a misery by spreading the contents of his sandwiches all over the floor until Nigel had a sandwich which was filled with drawing pins. And, Grabber ended up in hospital. Anyway, that was basically the confession that we told. Nigel wants to know if he's guilty of ABH or self-defense. Let's see what the people's verdict is.
It's fair to say we have never had such a huge response to a confession as we've had tonight, and all of them are forgiving. So, Sue Seston in Ipswich says, Nigel should definitely be forgiven. He was truthful and honest when asked by the bully what he had in his sandwiches. Grabber got what he deserved. No one likes a bully. Nicola H. Absolutely forgiven. He should have done it earlier. Reminds me of a friend who had sandwiches pinched daily, so one day he filled them with toenail clippings and the theft stopped. And finally Josh goes slightly off topic to say, forgiven, but cheese and marmalade sandwiches are brilliant. I've had them for years, just not too much marmalade and preferably double Gloucester cheese. Great show as ever.
Well, that's very good. We were discussing whether marmalade and cheese, whether that was together and if that was forgivable. But actually, as young Holly was saying, you have cheese with chili jam, so you could probably have it with marmalade.
That's true, yes.
So maybe Nigel is a style leader
as
far as this confession is concerned. Anyway, if you have a confession, maybe it's made you think of a tale from your childhood, your school days. We'd like to hear the confession because we could swap it for a smart speaker. That's the way it goes. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio. 5:46, that's REM, and the sound of Matt getting his confessions book out.
Indeed I am.
Yes, a special book in which to make all his notes.
Yes.
Just basically, I don't know why he bothers. You just say, yes, I forgive. Definitely.
Yeah.
If you miss any confession, by the way, of course, there's an easy way to catch up. You just go to the app and you search for
Simon Mayo's Daily Confession Podcast.
So straightforward, really.
That's what you do, just in case you miss any. Today's comes from Richard. No certificate needed, I believe, for this one, as opposed to yesterday's kind of pain and blood-filled orgy of destruction. Simon, hope you and the team are well, says Richard. Can't win us over that easily. Whilst waiting for the school bus to pick up my daughter, I was listening to the Plymouth end of Greatest Hits Radio when the evergreen ex-Radio Nottingham stalwart's dulcet tones reverberated in the car. That's me.
That's you, of course.
Me he's talking about.
Yeah.
And you're still doing confessions. Well, I thought I would confess to a howler from many years ago. Been hanging on to this. In the late 1960s, my friend was getting married at Trowell Church. The reception to be held at the very posh Ilkeston Co-op banqueting suite. He asked me to be his best man. Bit of background here. We'd grown up and gone to school in the Nottingham area, Bramcote Hills School for Boys, which was so good they demolished it a few years ago. In his early 20s, my friend had relocated to the London area to seek fame and fortune. So many of those attending the wedding were hooray Henrys.
Oh, right, of course.
You know the type. I imagine your Showbiz London is full of them. Swanning around with their fancy Dan media friends.
Yeah.
Strutting peacocks, the lot of them. Also sandals and beards. That's what I've heard. Nowadays, they would all have podcasts. and appear on each other's shows before inviting them round for a dinner party with David Walliams or someone. Anyway, I'm a bit off message. Nervous and having never done a 250 guest gig before, I decided that my first priority was to look the part. I approached another close friend who worked at the local Burton tailoring shop in Ilkeston. After measuring me, he said that I was, fortuitously, window model size.
Ooh.
And that meant that I could, by clandestine arrangement, borrow an expensive suit from the shop window, provided I returned it early the next morning before the boss showed up. I agreed with a promise not to spill anything on it. So I looked the part on the day, I have to say. During photographs, and somewhat embarrassingly, the groom's mother complimented me a lot on my very expensive mohair suit and asked if it was new. I replied yes, which was true, but didn't say that it had to be back in the Burton's window early the next morning. I have to say that being window model size made me feel rather brilliant. Like a model, really. And the groom's mother was clearly impressed, so hello, ladies.
Right.
This all may have made me somewhat overconfident and careless, I'm afraid. The wedding ceremony was over and we gathered at the reception, and with buttocks progressively clenching, the due time had arrived for my first best man speech in front of a packed southeast Sloane-centric audience. Jeremy's, Sebastian's, Hermione's, Octavia's were everywhere. I made a nervous start, had a confident middle and a humorous finish. Perfect. With enormous relief, gladiatorial style, I asked the guests to stand and raise their glasses in a toast to the newlywed bride and groom. I raised my glass, I cleared my throat. To James and Lorna, I said, expecting the time-honoured audience response. However, there was none. Only 250 pairs of eyes focused in shocked silence on the best man. Horrified doesn't even begin to describe it. You see, Lorna was his former, long time, very serious, very beautiful girlfriend. And Mary was his very new bride, controversial. They'd been James and Lorna for a very long time, and it just kind of slipped out. Absolutely no backpedaling from me was going to make a scrap of difference here. He looked daggers. She looked daggers. Even the groom's mother had gone off me.
Well.
Earth, please open and let me jump in. However, I did return the suit without a spill. And you have to say, when he got to the suit borrowing, I, along with everyone else, was thinking, well, we know what's going to happen next. And it wasn't. And so the mohair suit went back in one condition, and that was fabulous condition. The only problem was he got the wrong bride, which is almost the worst thing that you could possibly do in a speech. You can make a racy joke, don't do that.
No.
Make a suggestive joke, don't do that.
No.
But definitely get the name of the bride and the groom correct.
Yes.
Otherwise, Richard, I'm afraid you're in a lot of trouble. Sister Holly.
I'm glad Burton's tailors won out of this. I think they're the only ones who won out of this whole confession. I feel really sorry for Mary here in this whole situation. This was her big day. Hopefully the only time, once in a lifetime, wedding ceremony. And Richard got it wrong.
Yes.
He ruined it. His fault. He maybe should have written, I know you probably think, oh, well, why would he write that down, like 3 cheers for this couple? He would just know that. But maybe he should have written that down, should have been more organised, should have been more prepared, and that's why I'm not going to forgive.
Also, Trowell Church and the Ilkeston Co-op banqueting suite come out of it quite well as well.
Yes,
they do.
Obviously very fun.
Very well.
Venues. Brother from another
Oh,
country?
well, I'm going to forgive. Who knew it was a thing that you could get free suits if you're the same size as the models in the window? I didn't know that was a thing. I'll be trying that out. I'm going to forgive because actually, when you think about it, it's probably the groom's fault, because the groom was going out with Lorna for ages, and everyone thought he was going to get married to Lorna. Turns out that didn't last, and then suddenly hooks up with Mary, and then they decide to get married. It's quite understandable that he would have confused Lorna with Mary. So really, it's the groom's fault. Definitely
Really?
forgiven. Yep.
I think it's Mary's fault, really.
Yeah.
To his life like that. Anyway, people's verdict, please do you forgive Richard? 61054 on the text. First word is Simon. Let's pick up with the people's verdict on tonight's confession from Richard about what we thought was going to be a tailoring-based confession and ended up with the fact that he did his fantastic best man speech but then just got the bride wrong. So the people's verdict is in. Here it comes.
Everyone's forgiving because basically this happens all the time, apparently. Carol says, forgiven. I was once at a wedding where the groom, who'd been married previously, called his new wife by his ex-wife's name throughout his speech. Cue lots of gasps and embarrassed laughter. Trevor says, I'm going to forgive. I was best man many years ago, decided I didn't need notes for the speech and called the bride Lorraine throughout when her name was Louise. Nobody corrected me until afterwards. And Anne Pete in Dunstable says, I forgive, but just because it was at Ilkeston Co-op Banqueting Suite. Happy memories because that was the venue for my wedding reception.
There you go. So if you have a confession inspired by one of those, let us know. confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Well, it's confession time. It's 5:46. This is Greatest Hits Radio. We will need your verdicts, please, on tonight's tale, which comes from Jimmy. Thank you very much indeed, Jimmy, for getting in touch. Another smart speaker handed out already, whatever happens. Father Simon and the oh-so-understanding Brother Matt.
Yep.
The, in quotes, compassionate Sister Holly. It's not what I've heard.
Yeah.
And other esteemed members of the Corrective Collective. Decades on, as I recall the incident, I've decided it's finally time to share this story and seek forgiveness for the part I played. The incident to which my confession relates took place in the mid-1970s in an all-boys high school in North London. The school faculty included several priests and former World War II servicemen. They were strict. It was expected that rules would be obeyed. Overstep the mark at your peril. I was, for most of my time in that place of fine learning, a model student. I was even approached by Father McFlurry to see if I had felt the calling to join the priesthood, no less.
Come, Father McFlurry.
I changed his name.
Oh, right. That's what we went with.
Well, I just thought it was relatively uncontroversial. It was a warm spring day, Father Simon, and the fourth-year boys, that's year 9 for Holly, were enjoying a lunchtime kickabout on the large grass field that was within the school grounds and adjacent to the concrete playground. In this spring and summer term, the field would be used for PE lessons. And as it happened, we were using the sports equipment shed as a makeshift goal on this fateful day. The shed was approximately 12 foot by 8 foot and was of wooden construction. Mostly wood. On the front elevation, which doubled up as our goal, there was a small window. On this particular day, I was dribbling the ball like George Best, and I resisted a couple of dated sports reference.
Yes.
George Best was a noted Manchester United and Northern Ireland footballer, great at dribbling.
Fab.
I resisted a couple of tackles and took my shot with the partially inflated football. For some reason, we never played with fully inflated balls. Don't know if they're too hard or too bouncy. Anyway, I hit a beauty, chest height, veering just far enough away from the goalie, whose job it was to defend the goal, that is the shed, still to be on target. As bad luck would have it, as you've probably guessed, the ball smashed through the window and into the locked sports equipment shed. Unwritten schoolboy's rule, he who loses the ball must retrieve it. I approached the door at the rear of the shed. It was padlocked. Oh well, at least I'd shown willing. As I turned away, one of the other boys had found a brick. Now, I should at this juncture point out that my schoolmates were, as Matt would say, a lovely bunch of lads. There were some among them that it was, shall we say, prudent to keep on their good side. It was one such chappie who'd found the brick. In a flash, he had smashed the hasp and staple, and the door to the shed swung open. Go on then, he said. It's North London.
Yeah, it is. Ray Winston.
Get in there and find a ball. I didn't hesitate. It was dark in the shed, but I knew the best plan was to get in, find the ball, get out pronto, close the door, skedaddle before the broken window was spotted by the remarkably absent lunchtime supervisory teachers, who Matt will doubtless be blaming. I was in and out in a moment, but to my utter dismay, word had spread across the field and playground faster than it would have done on the internet, which hadn't been invented in 1976. Word had spread that the sports equipment shed was open. Within minutes, shot puts, hammers, the sporting type, discuses, if that's the plural, and, oh yes, javelins were being grabbed by the fistload, taken out into the field, and sent airborne. As the sky filled with javelins, discuses and shot puts, it was reminiscent of the spears, iron balls and other weapons catapulted into the air in one of those gladiatorial battle scenes full of mayhem, danger and almost inevitable injury. The chaos probably only lasted about a minute or two, but it seemed like an eternity to me. I can't remember if I implored my colleagues to stop. I think I must have done, because this was sort of my fault. Eventually a whistle blew. Some teachers were running towards the field looking pale, shocked, but ultimately relieved that miraculously, despite what had ensued, no impalings, broken limbs or even a scratch were evident. Second unwritten schoolboy rule, no snitching. The ringleader and other few participants in this infamous lunchtime episode were never identified. Phew. The window pane was replaced and reinforced glass and a sturdier lock were affixed to the shed door. Father Simon, given all that you have heard, I seek forgiveness not from the shed or indeed the caretaker who had to repair the shed. That's what he was there for. Nor, perhaps surprisingly, do I seek forgiveness from the fourth-year boys who were on the field that day. No, I am contrite and I do seek forgiveness from the teachers who, upon seeing the tumult, raced across the sports field from the staff room and were clearly shocked at the pandemonium before them. They seemed to age in an instant as they attempted to bring calm when all around was out of control. This was a level of stress that they could surely have done without, and for that, I am truly sorry. Oh, that's a very nice
fade.
Very nice.
Well done.
So it's Jimmy. The thought of javelins being flung in the air along with discuses and shot puts, a terrifying moment, nicely described by Jimmy. Now pronounced judgment here with Sister Holly.
Yeah, not very impressed, as usual. Why would you... Who is that daft to make the goal... a shed which has a window which is made of glass? That's a disaster waiting to happen. I know they're at school. He should have known better. And then that one little error causing absolute carnage for everyone. And that is why I don't forgive at all.
Brother from another gutter.
I'm going to forgive.
Yes.
And here's the reason why. Anyone who's been to a school at dinner time will know that you never normally see anyone playing track and field games, do you? It's normally football or cricket or something else. It's never track and field. And yet here was an opportunity that the pupils decided to take of going for the shot put and the javelin and doing it enthusiastically. Weren't being told to do it by a teacher. They were doing it of their own free will. Couldn't get enough of the track and field. And you know, isn't that what the Olympics is all about?
What?
And Daley Thompson would have been proud. That would be my take. And for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Yeah.
Right, I didn't quite follow that at all.
No.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
People's verdict, please, do you forgive Jimmy? Yes or no? On the text, please, 61054. First word is Simon. The people's verdict on tonight's confession. 61054. If you consider yourself a new listener to Greatest Hits Radio, we'd love to mention you and salute you and applaud you. 61054, first word is Simon, which has been used for Jimmy's confession, which came in and we used it today, about the ball that he kicked smashed through the window of the locked sports equipment shed at school. As a result, the sports equipment shed was open, shot puts, javelins, discuses raining down on the field in the school. Obviously very dangerous. No one was hurt.
No.
But apologising to the teachers because they all aged by about 1,000 years straight away. People's verdict is in. Here it comes.
So forgiven, says Adam from Lichfield. Jimmy didn't break the lock and he wasn't the one who encouraged any of the students to get any of the sports equipment out of the shed. And in the end, no one got hurt. So no harm, no foul. Michaela in Liverpool, though, says not forgiven. As Holly says, why would you use a shed as a goal? The glass window was bound to get broken and cause trouble. And Tim from Sutton says, forgiven. Could it be that he kept it quiet to keep in with Reverend McFlurry?
Oh, I see. I hadn't actually thought about that. Yes, Father McFlurry made an appearance, and then he disappeared. Anyway, so you get the general idea. If you have a confession, we'd like to see it. If we use it, you get a smart speaker. You send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And you can add some chips as well. That's very good. That is the latest. Anyway, time to give away another smart speaker in exchange for this confession, which comes from Kenny, brackets Liverpool fan.
Ooh.
Father Simon and the collective conscience. In the summer of 1990, my father somehow persuaded me to go and work with him as a ground worker in the construction industry instead of leading a hedonistic, scholarly life at university. The days were hard and long, but luckily I had football as a release. I used to play for a couple of teams and enjoyed my free time immensely. I must point out I was 21 and still live with my parents, and without meaning to sound horrible, working and living with father could be quite arduous. He always used to warn me about the possibility of getting injured playing football and then the potential days off work as a consequence. However, I was young, brash and defiant. It wasn't long into my budding career as my father's lackey where my defiance had to show itself as I hurt my shoulder playing in a charity football game, causing me to miss 3 weeks from work, and my father's great displeasure. "It was for a good cause," I protested. "It's a charity match." He simply grunted back that I needed to decide which was more important, football or work, with money to go to the pub. This is a tough dilemma for a young beer-drinking sports fanatic, and the only resolution I could think of was to pretend to father I had given up football. My legend of a mother used to wash my strip on the QT. And I swore I'd be more careful playing the game I loved, and so the deception began. Unfortunately, I survived only 2 months before some clodhopper of a defender took me out in the style of Eric Cantona a la Crystal Palace Kung Fu kick. Explain to Holly what happened.
So that's when Eric Cantona leapt into the crowd at Crystal Palace and Kung Fu kicked one of their fans.
Wow.
Okay,
yes,
very good.
wow, yes.
In a style that Eric Cantona would have approved of, sending me flying in the air and landing on the same shoulder I'd previously damaged. I heard the referee blow, and I must have been in a state of shock as I got up to take the free kick, and the ref stopped me. For a second I was bewildered. Surely it was a foul, I thought. And indeed it was, but the ref had stopped me because he could see that my collarbone wasn't in the usual place. It wasn't where it should be. When I looked at it, I distinctly remember going, "Oh darn, my father is going to go mental." I might have used stronger words, Father Simon. A trip to the hospital ensued. I was still wearing my football strip when the doctor asked how I'd done the injury. This is where I need to remember to be less sarcastic in life. And I said, playing tiddlywinks at the cricket club. Not the smartest quip when I needed this guy to help me out. Anyway, he retorted that he was more of a rugby man himself. I had broken my collarbone where it meets the shoulder. And he said, other than wearing a sling, there wasn't anything else that could be done whilst waiting for Mother Nature to do her magic and sent me home with the aforementioned sling in situ. When I got home, my father wasn't there, but my mother was. And she was laughing, as mothers do, asking how I'm going to explain this when my father gets home, because this is a long time ago. Panic was setting in, but also setting in with the painkillers, allowing my mind to think of a solution to my predicament. Knowing a mother's love for her favourite son conjured up all devious plans that might possibly work. This involved changing out of my attire at some considerable discomfort, I may add, and donning some baggy clothes. Father came home around 6, and I knew I had probably an hour in his company before he went out for a pint. So the family sat watching the television, and even with the drugs, I was bolt upright, grimacing and sweating. I could swear my father must have thought I was severely constipated or something. Anyway, that's part A of my plan. Father disappeared for his libation. Now for part B. They say a man's best friend is his dog, and to this broken-bone schemer, he most certainly was. The family's Springer Spaniel, we'll call him Ben, not his real name, was in all reality my dog. He was always by my side and slept in my bedroom every night, and tonight would be no exception as he would become literally my fall guy. I went to my room, awaited my father's return from the pub, and also for everyone to go to bed. When everyone had, I got out of bed and lay next to my dog, my saviour. I then smacked the floor with my good arm whilst performing a controlled scream of pain, followed by expletives loud enough to wake the entire house. Seconds later, my bedroom light came on and 3 concerned faces of my family were looking down at me as I writhed on the floor in agony. Although, to be fair, the drugs had worn off, so I actually was in agony.
Right, yeah.
"What's happened?" they simultaneously screeched, to which, and if there were cameras about, I'd have won an Oscar. I painfully answered between sobs, "I was going to the loo. I tripped over Ben, the dog, not its real name, and my shoulder is absolutely killing me." Sob, sob. To be honest, I daren't look at my mother at this moment, but I am her favourite, and my acting performance did save me from another lecture about getting my priorities right, and the dog didn't get told off either, so all's well that ends well. And before I get condemned by the nation for my deception, that is 33 years old now, I must add that I did kind of get my comeuppance 2 years later, as a different clodhopper broke my leg, and no amount of gas, air, drugs, and imagination was going to get me out of that one, and the due "get your priorities right" speech was not only delivered, but on my part, but it's been upheld ever since. So surely there is salvation there. Well, I'm not sure whether I think Sister Holly is going to be pretty stern on this one, and Brother Matthew will probably go, yeah, Liverpool fan. Anyway, Sister Holly goes first.
Yeah, not impressed really at all. Blaming the dog, the poor innocent dog that didn't do anything, and you're just blaming him. The fact that you acted this, it was like a premeditated thing that you planned. It wasn't even honestly, everything about this I'm really not feeling. Also, why didn't we have a PG certification at the start of this with that whole broken shoulder, shoulder, not soldier, going on there? Not liking it one bit. No, not forgiving.
Well, that was a production mistake then, wasn't it?
It was a bit, yeah.
Oh dear.
Brother from another gutter.
Dad was a little bit too eager to get involved with the moral high ground there, wasn't he? Wanting to give this talk every time, and I think pretty much engineered this situation with the dog and the son, because the son was having to sort things out. And I think it's probably an accident waiting to happen, having the dog in the bed the whole time. So it was bound to happen at some point.
Dog's on the floor, not in the bed.
And that's true. And the dog was also on the floor, making things even worse. And even if there had been cameras, my instinct is the people watching those cameras would have said, well, we can't do anything because Spurs have already taken their free kick.
Boom!
So, that's how it works, apparently. So I'm going to forgive.
A little bit of a VAR joke in there. How about that? And also, Kenny's a Liverpool fan, so what a surprise.
Wow.
Well, it's the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Kenny, yes or no? On the text, 61054. First word is Simon. People's verdict is in. Here we go.
Jenny in Manchester says forgiven. Like Matt says, his dad was putting way too much pressure on him. The dog being there was an accident waiting to happen, not to blame. But Michael says not forgiven. Will no one think of the poor dog in all this? Poor Ben. And David in Suffolk says forgiven. You can't hold a grudge against someone who took a Cantona kick. He's suffered enough.
Well, it's an interesting theory, Kenny. You get the smart speaker. Thank you for sending in your confession. Maybe you have one for us. Maybe it's a faking injury. I think most people have done that.
Yes.
A version of it. I can't go to school. Oh, I'm feeling sick. Anyway, if you got a story, let us know. It's confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.